Well, hey, everybody, welcome to the Seeing Ability podcast, where we're having a conversation of the world of people with disabilities. And that means sometimes we're going to be talking to young people who grew up as that person with a disability, young adults. We're going to be talking to a lot of parents that are or have raised kids on this path. And then we're going to talk to different people that support this community. It could be people in healthcare, in education, in nonprofits. First of all, I know you got don't have a lot of spare time and a lot of choices on how to spend it. So the fact that you're listening to us, thanks for tuning in today. I think you're really going to enjoy the passion and the perspective of my guest, McKaylin. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's really an honor.
Super excited to have you. I know we've worked together with your work there in Lexington with a Different World, the past podcast guest, and Sam's been
Yeah.
on the podcast, and that's how we first met, and then talking about the book, and got a lot of good things to get to. But folks want to get to know you outside of the world of disability, so we always do the Fast Four, brought to my friends at Reliable Tech Help. If you for your tech needs, reach out to them. They're in Louisville at 502-797-7399. The Fast Four, number one, what's your favorite food?
It's not really a food category, but it's Reese cups.
I mean, the regular ones or the holiday ones?
Spaghetti. The regular ones. I don't like the holiday ones.
You don't like the holiday ones. You're not a pumpkin girl,
No.
just regular. Okay, I'm a Reese fan, so I just had to clarify. Number two, if we look at your playlist, what kind of music are we hearing?
Like an 80s stripper mix, probably.
Okay, there you go.
Actually, one of the playlists, but music's like
Right.
I got my dad's taste in music.
Okay, I like it. What are you consuming these days in the realms of, like, you're watching something on TV, streaming, movie, maybe a book you're reading? What are you enjoying?
Um, I've honestly not been like mostly poetry. I've gotten
Hmm.
back into that's something I was really interested when I was a teenager, and I kind of got disconnected from it. So now, like, especially if I'm looking at my phone, I'm trying to disconnect from media and be more like emotionally in tuned.
I love it. Okay, very peaceful. And last but not least, what is a bucket list destination that you'd love to go to someday?
Ireland.
Ireland. There you go. All right. Well, welcome. So let's talk a little bit about your backstory. Obviously, I met you as a mom in this world, but tell the rest of the folks, how did you get into this club you might not know you were signing up for?
I actually, somebody the other day, I noticed myself calling it a privilege, that I've kind of always been adjacent. My mom, when I was younger, she had a really bad accident injury, and she was paralyzed for a few years. They didn't think she'd ever regain mobility, but she did. Um, and like that was a really eye-opening experience at that age to see how unfit the world was for when life happens.
Mm,
And then in high school, I did a lot of homebound high school, but when I was there, I did some peer tutoring. And I just like I tried to always like make sure to connect with the kids that were different
hmm
without, you know, that condescending label of
sure.
different. And then I had a really close friend, almost like a sister. Her little boy was born autistic. And
hmm
that just really like, I always tried to like be really knowledgeable of resources and be like in tune with her because I knew she was struggling. And this, they're like back in Eastern Kentucky, so the resources are just not there. And
hmm
and then, as whatever would have it, I ended up I had Maverick in 2020. During COVID, Maverick was diagnosed with mild hypotonic cerebral palsy at around suspected at 6 months old, MRI confirmed at like 18 months. And then at 2, he received a level 3 or severe um, autism spectrum disorder diagnosis.
Mm. And one of the beginning points for most parents with those type that early journey up to age 2 is this idea that you're on a different path, the acceptance, and how do you deal with that? What part of that was it for your story, the emotions that came up, and how did you find yourself getting on the other side? And then maybe once we talk about that a little bit, what advice, looking back, it's so much easier to look back, do you give to
Yeah.
other parents that are really just hit between the eyes with the fact that this is not going to be the parenting journey they thought they were going to have?
So I genuinely had a hard time. I can go ahead and give a little bit of retrospect. Um, I'm aware now that a lot of it was like internalized ableism, things that I had grown up, untrue stereotypes that I had been hearing or around or, portrayed to me. So when Maverick was diagnosed, it was like the end of the world. It felt
Mhm.
it was like, oh, and one thing that really like helped me, oddly enough, was watching his little brother or his big brother. He was little when he was born, but there's a 5 year age gap. And the way that McIvan just never really like pointed out any difference, it was just like, that's Bubby. And it was like, that was kind of like a reminder to me. Like I tried to like do that myself. Like, okay, this is just Maverick. Like this is Maverick. But I did really have a hard time, and it got to the point I finally sought out therapy because I was
Mhm.
like, I can't control this. And I was just angry at the world. I was angry at everything. My perspective was a lot like, why did this happen to us? Um,
Mhm.
and I'm a very, we just talked about this. I'm a very forward, direct person. And so I start with this new therapist and I walk in there and I'm like, look, I don't want any bullshit. What are you going to do for me?
Right.
And I mean, she just looked at me and she was like, she specialized in like peri and peri, whatever, pregnancy and after and
Yeah.
postpartum and stuff. And she said, what do you mean? And I said, what, like, here's a general idea of like my situation and how I feel. Like, what's your approach? Like, just right off the bat. And she said, like a grieving mother.
Hmm.
And it kind of made me mad. And I was like, what do you mean? And she was like, you're grieving a child you did not have. You have one, like, but it's not the child you expected. It's not the child you had all these plans for. It's not the child you dreamed of. She was like, you're grieving that. You're grieving the life you had with your first son. You're grieving life outside of therapy clinics and the things that you're not able to do anymore and that he's not able to do. That's grief. I was like,
Mm.
that's not grief. I mean, I was defensive. I was like, that's not grief. Like, I know grief. Like, but then I went home and I laid and I thought about it and I was like, holy shit, that's what this is.
Yeah.
But it was like, and I almost felt guilty to like let myself like realize that.
Right. Yeah, because it's kind of like if you admit the grief, it's almost like you're saying there's something wrong with him, or like you're,
Like
and
there,
that's not the
right.
point of it, but it feels that
Like
way.
he's right here. And if I say I'm grieving, then it's because something's missing,
Right.
but he's right here. Like, what kind of mom does that make me? Is how I was thinking about it. But then I realized it, and it was like, I'm allowed to, there's like, I can do two things at once. I can grieve the fact that he doesn't, you know, choose his Halloween costume or care what his Halloween costume is or have a favorite character to dress up as, while also enjoying the fact that he doesn't care. So I can dress him up as whatever.
Yeah.
And he's just like happy to be there, like gratitude and grief can coexist.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that. And it was like my therapist literally looked at me like, I don't think she treats everybody that way, but she was like, the quicker you realize what this is, the quicker you can deal with it. Because that's
Right.
all.
You were direct with her. She was direct with you.
Yeah,
That's
which I
probably that
appreciate.
was
I mean,
helpful.
yeah. So
Wow. Yeah. So that's a big step, I think, for people, for people listening out there, is that, like you said, you were like, no, 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 it's not that, the denial. And then you'd like, yeah, it is that. And there's nothing wrong with that being a real feeling.
yeah,
You're not a
letting
bad,
go of it, like in the midst of that realization, that guilt that popped up,
yeah,
getting over the guilt was what was the hardest part. Because it was like, how am I supposed to be grieving? Like, I'm not allowed to grieve a child when I have a child sitting in front of me.
right. And there's no shortage of things in life that are going to point out to us we're a bad parent. So,
No,
you don't
mom,
need one.
like parental guilt is like the worst
And let's
torture.
call it what it is, parental guilt, but mom guilt, more specifically,
There's
especially.
there's a lot more like pressure on we we have more pressure from society, and we do put more pressure on ourselves. Like there's just a higher expectation of like, and I think a lot of people aren't honest about motherhood.
Right.
So then when you get in the thick of it, you're like, what is happening? Like, why do I feel this way? Like, but it's like motherhood in general, you take disability out of it, it's like an ocean, and you don't realize how deep it is until you're already fucking drowning. Like you're underwater. Like you're like, wait a minute, like nobody told me that this is what was gonna happen. So then you're like, am I the only one? And then you add the layer of a disabled child, and it's like, oh God. And people don't talk about it.
Right. So that piece, you had that realization. Obviously, mental health and going to therapy really helpful. When you're talking to parents today who are right at the beginning of it, they're at that diagnosis stage. What is your big advice on this chapter, the acceptance piece for them?
The same advice I gave actually yesterday. There was a woman in here whose best friend just passed away. And I was like, don't expect anything of yourself. Like, don't put yourself on a timeline of I should be okay by now, or I should have accepted it by now. Don't do that. Just feel it and take it day by day or minute by minute. I mean, I've been there where I'm like, if I can just make it, it's 4:45. If I make it to 5, I have succeeded. Like, then I
Yeah.
can start crying. Like, but I told her yesterday, and I would tell any mom the same thing. I'm like, don't pressure yourself. Just whatever you feel, it's okay to feel it.
Hmm.
It's just, it is what it is. This is happening to you and your child.
Mm. And another thing I heard was that you kind of said it pretty nonchalantly, like it's obviously a good thing to do, but I don't think a lot of people avoid it, is you went to therapy. You went to an outside expert who wasn't involved in it, but who's helped lots of different families through this, who knows, has heard and related to the ups and downs, who could give you a perspective that you didn't know you needed. So that
Right.
that
Yeah.
therapy
And, and,
piece.
and, and really, like, she gave me permission almost.
Hmm.
But it was like, like, I mean, I admire you. I think very highly of you. But if my appendix were to rupture, you're not the guy I would call.
Right.
And you're
I'm
not the guy.
glad. We're both
And
glad.
and it was like I was there with Maverick, because it was like, I would beat myself up, and it was like, if he would make if he wasn't making progress at therapy, I was sad. If he made progress at therapy, I was like, well, why couldn't I do that? And it's like,
Right.
well, you wouldn't be upset that you couldn't remove my appendix. Why am I upset that I can't do an occupational therapist job? And then I was struggling with, my own mental health and everything. And I was like, this ain't my job. Somebody gets paid to do this. I'm going to go let them do it.
Right.
And it was like putting everything in like that perspective, like really removed stigma for me, where I was like, somebody got trained to deal with this. I didn't. I'm just you.
Yeah. Well, maybe within that, there's another nugget of advice is like, don't be afraid to lean on people who've been there before and helped you, like the OTs, the PTs, the speech therapist, the mental
That
health
that
therapist.
Yeah, because that is also like my usually my second biggest piece of advice. Like if it doesn't matter what it is, if your child is struggling, if you are struggling with something involving your child, regardless, talk to your child's team.
Hmm.
I will never forget, and this is kind of raw. Um, Maverick started with fecal smearing and ingesting, and
Yeah.
and that's part of autism that nobody talks about. So when it started happening, like my brain starts going, the mom guilt, and it's like, am I not feeding him enough? I mean, the most ridiculous shit you could think of. I'm like, did I? That's a different day, but like, and I was terrified, but I was like, I need help. Like, I don't know how to stop this behavior.
Hmm.
And I was like literally in my head, I was like, if I go to his occupational therapist, they're gonna call CPS.
Mm.
Like, because no one had ever said, I'd never been around another person who was like, my child does this. And
Right.
so I finally like lose it on his occupational therapist. And she's like, oh, honey, that happens all the time. Why didn't you tell me? How long has it been
Wow.
going on? Like she was just so nonchalant. And to me, it was like, a, a deal breaker. Like, you know, it was shame again. Internalized ableism is what it
Right.
was.
Right.
um because I also thought that like speaking about the reality of his disability was taking away his dignity, and that's not so.
Right.
Like, and now I'm like very crass and open about it, and people are like, what's one of the hardest things about his disability? And I'm like, when he goes through phases that he wants to eat his shit. That's a lot.
That would be one. Yeah.
That's hard.
Right. But like you said, until it gets talked about, everybody thinks it's their private battle, that they're the only one.
And then they're not getting help.
Yeah.
So, and that's, I think that's what's helped me get to acceptance, is that's how I've been with all other things. Like even before I had Maverick, just as a mom in general, I decided I was going to be very brutally honest about the not so pretty side. Um,
Hmm.
because I wish somebody would have warned me.
Right.
Like when my son and when I had my oldest, I was like, why didn't anybody tell me this is rough? Like this
Right.
this is not magical. Like, and I did not like being pregnant. I was miserable, and I was like, and I felt bad because nobody else was like, being pregnant sucks. So I've been
Right.
that mom. Like I'm like, look, ain't a good time. Wasn't for me. If you like it, go for it. But and so I've been the same way with Maverick. I just speak out. I just tell it how it is, and it makes me feel. Um, I think when I allowed myself to start doing that, it gave me like the sense of normalcy, because I was that way with my oldest child, and it was like I talk about it. If McIvan's like throwing a bad temper tantrum, why can't I talk about this whatever behavior Maverick's having that's driving me up the wall?
Yeah.
Same
Absolutely.
thing.
Well,
Just a
I bet you there's a lot of people listening that are nodding their heads and can relate, because like nobody ever talks about that, that you're probably not alone. And there might be
no.
somebody that has this exact thing happen and they've never told anybody. And so thank
Yeah,
you
no.
for just
Somebody
being
was
real.
like, somebody said something about Maverick's pajamas. They were like, why don't you get like little keeper sleeper? Or like somebody asked me why I didn't get some big brand of like the bamboo sleepers. And I was like, baby, first of all, he eats the sleeper itself. And then second, he will get into his diaper and then nobody's having a good time. So we buy the little ones that make him look like a character off of Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And he is secure and safe. We don't care about cute in this house, it's function.
Right.
They're like, but what do you mean he'll get in it? And
Do you
he's
really want to know?
I'm like, "Mm, he gets in it. And then if they don't get it, I just flat out say it. I'm like, he'll eat his poo.
Right.
And they're like, well, doesn't he think that's gross? And I'm like, no.
Right.
So, and I struggled with it for a really long time. And like, he has pica really bad. He chews on the window sills. And, somebody came in the house one day, like an HVAC guy, And he was like, "What kind of dog do you have?" And then I just thought it was funny at that point, and I was like, 3.5 years old, nonverbal autistic, two-legged.
Right.
His face just was like, and he left, and I was like, that was probably kind of rude. But then I was like, I bet you what, he ain't never gonna walk in another house and make an assumption about why there's chew marks on the walls.
Right. Right. No, you did a little education there.
Yeah, I might have done it however I do things, but he'll
That's
think about
okay.
it next time. So
So another topic that really relates to this is when you have a kid who is different and has all these different behaviors and you take him out in the world. How was that for you to navigate the stares, the questions, and even your it's not just other people, but your reaction to how other people were.
and like I was always the anxious mom, period. Like if
Hmm.
my child cried in public, if McIvan was like jumping in a booth at a restaurant, I was like, oh God, like, please stop. Like everybody's looking. You make me look bad. Sit down. And with Maverick, it was like, and I have control issues. Having a disabled child really challenges that.
Right.
And, we would go in Lowe's, and for whatever, he just felt like it, and he would just just over and over and over. And I'm like, I know people can hear this echoing throughout this whole store. And I just wanted him to stop, but saying stop doesn't work. And so it's like eventually I just had to like give up the control and be like, he's gonna do it. Like I gotta live my life. I've got to go get a bucket of play sand for a hermit crab habitat. So he's going to scream while I do it. And it just is what it is.
Hmm.
And we take him to this barber who said one time, if someone can't be inconvenienced by a child screaming who's terrified of getting his hair cut, they don't need to be in public.
Mm.
He was like, he deserves to be here too, whatever that
Wow.
looks like. And I was like, yeah, like he does. So now I'm like my methods are questionable. The only time someone's ever been like really rude, I feel like, because I love when people ask questions. And when
Yeah.
kids ask questions, I'm like, do not shush your child. Because when you shush your child, you put in your child's mind, there's a correlation with that's wrong. But it's like,
Right.
oh, encourage them to ask me. I will answer anything. This is why he doesn't speak like you speak. This is why. And I love curiosity because that's how people learn. And
Hmm.
fun fact, my oldest has been most curious at school, and we were like super proud of that. But anyway, uh,
Yeah.
one time a woman was like, "What's wrong with him?" And
Ooh.
I wasn't having a good day, Jim, and I was like, maybe he just doesn't effing like you. And I mean, she looked at me like I had committed an actual crime, and she was like, "That was really rude." I said, "So was your question." Because, like, when you think about it, like, she spoke to my son didn't speak back. Her first assumption is, what is wrong with him? But, like, on a bigger scale, like, you're not entitled to a child speaking to you anyway.
Right.
And there are so many other ways to ask me something other than what's wrong with him. So I'm like, nothing. He doesn't like you. She was like, that was
Right.
really rude. I was like, and?
Yeah.
And it was like I thought about it after I left, and I was like, could I have taken that moment to be the bigger person and like educate her on non-speaking individuals and all of this? Yeah, probably. But the way I did it felt better at the time. So that's what I did.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then one day somebody commented about him stimming, so I just started stimming with him, looked him right in the eyes, and was like, ew, ew, ew. Like I think once you just embrace the chaos, it's like
Yeah.
it's better for everybody.
And life went on in both instances, right? The world
Yeah,
didn't end.
that's what, yeah, that when you get to that point when you're like, oh, it keeps moving,
Yeah.
like might as well just make the best of it, I guess, like
I love it. So with having both boys, sometimes the issue comes up about how do you set the appropriate level of like expectation, set the bar for any kid. And that's a challenge with any kid, any parenting journey. But when you've got a kid who has differing abilities,
Mhm.
what was that like for you to find that right? Or even today, how is it still like for you to
It's
find that right balance?
it is very difficult. And it's made it difficult for both of the boys
Hmm.
because it's like the little things that you take for granted that your, you know, neurotypical child can do that were just nature to them, like I didn't have to teach McIvan to put his hands down and catch himself if he was falling.
Right.
So then it's like I'm torn in between two worlds because I'm grieving the fact that this child can't do it, but I'm thankful that this child can. And then even though like I've had moments where like even though McIvan's doing something that like I should probably correct, like he has the ability to do that. Like, so for a long time I was stuck in this, and people make this comparison a lot. And everybody, if anybody hears this, they're gonna go, yep. People make this comparison a lot where it's like you are wanting your child to stop talking while I'm giving anything if mine could say mom.
Right.
Well, you're hearing it from me. I would give anything if Maverick could say mom. But there are still times that it is very hard for me to not tell my Gaiman to shut up because I get overstimulated. And I'm like I said earlier, they can coexist.
Yeah.
I can want McIvan to be quiet for 5 seconds and also want Maverick to speak to me. It doesn't make me ungrateful that McIvan has the ability to speak, and it doesn't make me, you know what I'm saying? Like I had
Yeah.
I had to get to that point where it was like it just is what it is, and I cannot compare them. So I cannot compare them. I cannot expect the same from both of them, and I cannot expect myself to feel the same way about both of them. And I kept telling everybody, I was like, it feels like I'm stuck in two worlds.
Right.
I'm in between two worlds. Like it's from one extreme to the other. I mean, it genuinely is. Like, Maverick is on the more severe end of the spectrum, and has much higher support needs and requires 24/7 care. And then McIvan is like hyper independent, super, just there's no middle ground. And I was like, I'm in two different worlds. And then one day I don't even know what clicked, and it was like, I'm not in two different worlds, I'm just in my world. This is my world.
Right.
This is just it. And one day McIvan's teacher called me because he told a joke in class. It's made me a more relaxed parent in this way. He told a joke in class. So she calls me and she's like, hey, I just wanted to let you know, I'm like, I haven't told a joke in class. And I was like, okay. Was it inappropriate? She's like, no. I said, did he say a bad word? She said, no. I was like, okay. Was it did he interrupt your teaching? She was like, no, it was during a quiet activity. And I was like, okay. Was it funny? She was like, yeah, the whole class laughed. I was like, well, what do you want from me? And she just kind of sit there for a minute, and you knew she was confused. And then it like reality set in. I was like, okay, not every mom is me. And I was like, I'm sorry. Like, I really don't mean this in a negative way, but I have a child who does not have the ability to speak at all. So my son telling a joke is just not high on my priority list.
Right.
And she was like, that really puts things into perspective. And I was like, yeah. But then at the same time, I've become more demanding, or my expectations have been higher, especially for McIvan. Sometimes I catch myself, I'm like, give him a break, because it's like, if Maverick can do it, I know you can.
Right.
And then with Maverick, I didn't have expectations. I'll just be honest with you. I'd kind of give up. I was like, we're screwed. And we had a bad experience with a specialist who gave us a list of things, like the likelihood of Maverick ever doing things.
Oh, the never do list.
So in my head, I was already there. I was like, oh my God, he'll never talk. Oh my God, he'll never walk. Oh my God. And I mean, I was devastated, like just crying every day. It was sadness, just, and I was like, what am I supposed to do? And I felt like accepting his disability was accepting defeat.
Mm,
And then my mama bear kicked in because I get on his my chart and there's this little list that says not discussed with parents during visit. And then it's this list and it's like a likelihood of Maverick ever achieving continence, 0. Likelihood of Maverick ever having functional communication, 0. Likelihood, Jim, I went off. I was like, you have no right to put a limitation on my child.
mm.
You have no right to put a limitation on my child for his sake or mine. You are not going to put us in a box of what is possible. I mean, it was like once somebody else said what I was thinking, I was pissed. I was like, no, 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 no.
Right.
Watch us. Watch him. And now he's peeing on the potty. He's pooped on the potty once. He uses an AAC device. He has functional communication. And I am very proud of the pettiness that every single time he makes an achievement that this specific doctor said he would never achieve, I send them a little picture in my chart. I'm like, look, Maverick did.
I love it. I love it.
It's just like, I think sometimes you just need to be like somebody else needs to say it out loud. And there's a book that's similar to yours and it's called Special. And it's the antidotes to the obsessions that come with raising a child with disability. And it's a similar format. It's like interviews of other parents, but it's like based out of the UK.
Hmm.
Can't even remember what the diagnosis is or anything like that. But in one part of the book, because this really stood out to me because it was like the same concept. In one part of the book, a sibling to a disabled child said, sometimes I feel like it would be easier if Sissy wasn't here. And the mom said, me too. Like sometimes I feel that way too. And it was like once the mom said it out loud, the child was like, oh my God, why would you say that?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's like it becomes real when you hear it from somebody else that it's like, well, no, that's not how we feel. That's, we thought it, but we're moving on. And that's really what set me with Maverick. And now Maverick very much has probably higher expectations than, but nobody ever rose to low expectations.
Mm.
I would rather expect it of him and him not be able to do it and me give him an appropriate amount of time and effort on that activity and then move on to something else than to just assume that he can't.
Well, I feel like we're going to have you back for like 4 episodes, and I know people are going to feel the same because we hit on just a few of many topics. But those who don't see you, because most people are listening to this podcast, behind you there's some plants, and you've
Oh yeah.
recently taken on a whole different part of the journey that is not just plant related. You can explain that, but also helping serve other families. So tell us about what's going on.
So we are sitting in mixed pot spot. And then you can see here behind me, we have plants. Because somebody asked me why in the world I combined these two plants. And then we have noise canceling headphones, chewies. And over here is, like you said about helping the community, we have the printed possibilities section. So I got tired of not having somewhere where I could go and like do things that a typical 28-year-old mom wanted to do and it not be difficult with my child or people not staring at my child or, not like, especially shopping local, shopping small, keeping money within the community. Like, it's not fair that if I want to plan, I have to go to Home Depot. It's just I'd like to support the little local nurseries, but it's hard. And I just wanted a safe place and I couldn't find it. And I had the privilege of my husband and my husband's job and just the routine and the place we are currently in the stage of Maverick's acceptance and his diagnosis and his progress in therapy. And I was like, I'm just going to build it. So it's a plant store primarily, but it's inclusive. Like there's bulbs. Somebody's offered to fix my bulbs every time, like once a week, somebody offers to fix my lights. And I'm like, they're there on purpose because all of those bulbs are overwhelming to someone with sensory disorder, like sensory issues.
Hmm.
So the lights are dampened, lower. Everything I try to keep it, like I'm like, if it's Mav proof, it should be everybody proof, but then you never. And
Yeah.
we've got like a disability buggy, like they have at like the Caroline's cart. We're very we're very grateful for them. The manufacturer helped us out in acquiring that. But the printed possibilities is actually there's a dad. He doesn't want people knowing who he is because he wants the focus to be on what we're doing and why we're doing it. But so like for instance, yesterday a little boy came and picked up his first cup holder. So we do like a full evaluation on whatever mobility device. We get measurements, we figure out the best placement for it, given the individual's mobility range, given, all the other factors. It's like, we try to keep it personal to the
Hmm.
person because that's what it needs to be, is tailored to them. Um, and we 3D print either whether it's a backpack hook or a cup holder or we've got a little sign that says no touchy because people kept touching one of my friends, like physically moving his wheelchair. And he was like, I also want spikes for the handles. And I was like, okay, we got it. Like, if people don't know not to, you know, void your autonomy as a human being, then they
Right.
can get their hands poked. We did it. And he loves it. But, it's just we're kind of new. We're just like I said, I'm just a mom. We don't have a huge village, but I've got what I've made. And then the guy behind the printer mind, the
Hmm.
mind, he is just a working dad with two kids. Neither of his kids are disabled or anything like that. I actually approached him because we needed a speech device holder for Maverick's adaptive stroller. And when I told him what the price would be, he about dropped.
Right.
And he was like, I could literally make that for like $50. And I
Yeah,
was
because
like,
what you're finding is what most people are trying to find solutions online, Amazon, different places. It's either not there or it doesn't quite work or it's super expensive or all the above.
yeah. And it's like, it's not that hard to fix. Somebody just has to like be willing to.
Right.
So we're willing to. And we're doing the best we can. But like I said, he's just a working dad with two kids that just got angry at he got an inside look to the system and he said, I don't like this. This is unfair. And I was like, buddy, buckle up because it's rough out here for us. But
Yeah, you've got a degree in unfair.
yeah, and we've got like one little 3D printer. I mean, we're doing the best we can and helping
Yeah.
as we can. I told you earlier, someone from Eastern Kentucky's like, my baby deserves his sippy cup. And I'm like, he does. So like, we're going to have to FaceTime, I guess. And, it's trial and error like everything else, but we're trying to make a difference. And, that's, I can't do much. I'm limited. Uh,
Right.
but at least within this 1,200 square foot, I can do something. If
All right,
I'm
hold that thought. I want to ask you a wrap-up question, but first we're going to take a quick break. When you have a kid who is different, all your ducks need to be in a row, especially your money. Cam Howell with Primerica knows the joys and challenges as he and his wife raise their medically fragile son, Brooks. Cam brings over 14 years of experience to help his clients be protected, have a plan for the future, reduce debt, and connect to resources. Get your financial house in order so that you can enjoy every moment with your child. Reach out today at 502-803-5075. And now back to the show. Well, it's an incredible oversimplification, but I kind of like to wrap up episodes with asking, especially parents, for kind of like if you were brought in as a speaker, maybe it's a hospital and they have a bunch of families with kids with different diagnoses, but they're going to be on a different path, and you kind of gave them your big three keys to success, what would you tell
Ooh. Um, do you want like the first things that pop into my head,
them?
like
Sure.
honestly, or do you want like filtered?
What's the first things that pop in your head?
Fuck what other people think. Like, first of all,
Yeah.
and what you thought, just forget that. And then just because, and I said this in an article, and it was one of my favorite quotes, and it's my favorite, one of my favorite advice. Just because the child isn't measuring up using the scale society uses doesn't mean they're not measurable.
Mm. Can you say that again?
Just because a child is not measuring up using the same scale that society uses doesn't mean your child is not measurable.
Love it.
And just feel whatever you feel. I mean, literally,
Yeah.
it's every different day. Yesterday, I was pissed. Yesterday, I was mad that this wasn't fair. This is ridiculous. I cannot do this for the rest of my life. You know, why is this happening to me? What did I do wrong to deserve this? And then today I woke up and I was like, thank God my child's with me and not somebody who's going to take advantage of a vulnerable child. Today I woke up grateful. And that's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
Tomorrow I might wake up laughing about it. I don't know.
Like I said, we could have probably 3 episodes, and I might have to have you back. But thank you so much for sharing just a little bit with us today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And if you guys enjoyed this, which I know you did, and I know you got a chuckle and some validation from what you heard today, we don't want to be a best kept secret. So like this episode, share it with somebody, rate and review the podcast. We love ideas from you of other parents like Michaelin that you know that might share their insights. We're especially looking for those young adults who grew up as a person with a disability to share their perspective, kind of looking back, what were their keys to success. And we feature every month at least one nonprofit around the country that's doing amazing work. So hit me up with those ideas. Go to my Facebook page for the podcast and like and follow the podcast. And don't make this a best kept secret. We want listening to speak to guests like Michaelin to become part of the village for parents and have this podcast be something where they feel validated, there's a little bit of education, and they feel heard and seen. So let's give this to everybody so it can be part of their life. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.